The control panel exploded in a shower of sparks, and Marcus Webb threw his arms up to shield his face. Red warning lights flooded the cockpit of his small cargo vessel as the engines screamed. He had maybe 30 seconds before impact. Come on, Marcus muttered, wrestling with the steering controls. The planet below filled his viewport, all browns and yellows and endless stretches of nothing. Sorrow's prime. A desert world on the outer edge of the shipping lanes, not where he wanted to die today. The ship hit the atmosphere hard, and Marcus felt his teeth rattle. The hull temperature climbed into the danger zone. The automated voice kept repeating the same calm warning about hull breach and system failure, like it was discussing the weather instead of his death. Marcus had been flying cargo runs for 6 years. Medical supplies, food shipments, replacement parts for distant colonies. Boring work, but honest work. Safe work, usually. He never expected a meteor shower to destroy his navigation systems and send him crashing toward an empty planet with no way to call for help. The ground rushed up to meet him. Marcus pulled back on the controls with everything he had, trying to level out the fall. The ship screamed across the desert surface, throwing up massive clouds of dust and sand. Metal shrieked against rock. Something tore away from the bottom of the vessel with a sound like thunder. Then everything went sideways and the world went black. Marcus woke up to silence and terrible heat. His head pounded and something wet ran down the side of his face. Blood, probably. He blinked until his vision cleared, then unbuckled his safety harness with shaking fingers. The cockpit was destroyed. Panels hung loose, wires sparked and smoked, and the viewscreen had cracked into pieces. But Marcus was alive, and the emergency oxygen still worked. Small victories. He stumbled to the back of the cargo hold, checking the emergency supplies locker. The case had survived the crash. Inside, he found a medical kit, emergency food bars, a thermal blanket, a basic toolkit, and 2 canteens of water. 2 canteens on a desert planet. With no rescue coming because his communications equipment was scattered across miles of wasteland, Marcus checked his portable scanner. The device flickered to life, showing the area around him. No water sources nearby. Outside temperature was 43 degrees and climbing. The ship was broken in 7 places and nothing worked anymore. He had maybe 3 days if he was careful with the water, 4 if he was lucky. Marcus grabbed the supplies and forced open the emergency hatch. Heat hit him like a wall when he stepped outside. The air was so dry it hurt to breathe. Sand and rocky ground stretched away in every direction, broken up by strange crystal formations that stuck out of the earth like frozen flames. The ship was finished. Even if he had the parts and the skills, it would take weeks to fix. His only chance was to find shelter, save his water, and hope someone noticed he had missed his scheduled arrival. How long would that take? 2 days before they started looking? 3? A week. Marcus pushed the dark thoughts away and started walking. Movement was better than sitting still. The crystal formations might give him shade. Maybe there would be caves or underground water or something that could help him survive longer. He walked for 2 hours, stopping every 20 minutes to rest and drink a little water. The sun climbed higher, turning the world into an oven. His clothes were soaked with sweat. The scanner showed nothing but more sand, more rocks, more crystal. Then he saw it. At first, Marcus thought it was just another rock, but as he got closer, he realized the shape was wrong. Too much like a living thing, too deliberately placed. It was a creature. Marcus approached slowly, his hand moving to the small plasma cutter on his belt. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. The creature did not move. As he got closer, he could see it clearly. It looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, but smaller. Maybe the size of a large dog. Its scales were deep blue and purple, shimmering even in the harsh sunlight. 4 legs, a long tail, wings folded against its sides. Its head was tucked down against its body, and its chest barely moved. It was dying. Marcus stopped, his survival sense fighting with something deeper. This was an alien creature on an alien world. It could be dangerous. It could be sick with something terrible. It could be anything, but it was clearly a child. He could tell from the big head and eyes the way its wings had not fully grown yet, and it was suffering. He stepped closer. The dragon child did not react. Its breathing was fast and shallow. When Marcus knelt beside it, he could see how dull its scales looked, how its tongue hung from its mouth. Dehydration, severe dehydration. Marcus understood that problem very well right now. He pulled out his scanner and ran it over the creature. The readings came back confused, trying to match what it saw against known species. Carbon-based, oxygen-breathing, similar body temperature regulation to humans, biology that made enough sense to the scanner. The dragon child was dying of thirst. Marcus sat back, staring at the creature. Then he looked at his 2 canteens, 2.5 liters of water, maybe 3 days of life if he was careful. "This is stupid," he said out loud. "This is the stupidest thing you have ever thought about, Marcus Webb." Hope, desperate, dying hope. Marcus unscrewed the cap from one of his canteens. He had no idea if water would even help this creature. He had no idea if it could drink what humans drank. He had no idea if saving it would matter at all. But he could not watch a child die. Human, alien, dragon, or anything else, he just could not do it. "Okay, little one," Marcus said softly. "Let's see if this helps." Its eyes opened wider. A thin tongue came out to catch the drops. Marcus kept pouring, slow and steady, letting the dragon child drink. He watched the water level drop, watched his own survival chances fall with every swallow. The dragon drank half the canteen before it stopped, seeming stronger. Its breathing became easier. The glow in its eyes got brighter. Marcus capped the canteen and set it aside. He looked at what he had left. 1.5 canteens now, maybe 2 days. Probably less in this heat. The dragon child shifted, trying to lift its head. Marcus helped support it, surprised by how heavy the creature was. It made a sound like wind chimes, soft and musical. Then it did something Marcus did not expect. It pressed its head against his chest, right over his heart. Images flooded Marcus's mind. Not words, but feelings and pictures. Thank you, warmth, safety, a sense of family, of belonging. The dragon child was sharing its emotions directly with him. Marcus felt tears in his eyes. He was going to die on this desert planet. He had probably just made certain of it by giving away half his water. But right now, holding this small creature that trusted him completely, he could not make himself regret it. "You're going to be okay," Marcus whispered. "We're both going to be okay." The dragon child stayed pressed against Marcus's chest for a long time, breathing slowly and steadily. The images flowing into his mind became clearer as the creature regained strength. He saw flashes of what had happened to it. A herd of dragons flying together across a golden sky. The child's mother, massive and beautiful, her scales the same blue and purple but deeper and richer. Then chaos. Ships appearing from nowhere, firing weapons, scattering the herd. The child falling injured, wing unable to keep flying, landing hard in the desert, calling out with its mind but no answer coming back. Lying in the sun for hours, maybe days, growing weaker and weaker. "They left you behind," Marcus said softly. "I'm sorry, little one." "I'm so sorry." His lips were already cracking from the dry air. His head ached from dehydration and the crash. But when he looked down at the trusting golden eyes staring up at him, he knew what he had to do. "All right," he said, reaching for the second canteen. "Let's get you strong enough to move. We need to find shelter before the sun gets worse." The creature's scales began to brighten slightly, regaining some of their shimmer. It tried to stand, wobbled, and Marcus caught it before it fell. "Easy, easy. Take your time." It was bigger than Marcus had first thought, coming up to his waist when standing. Its wings unfolded slightly, testing their movement. One wing looked damaged, the membrane torn in places. "That's why you couldn't fly away," Marcus said. "That's why they couldn't find you." "Velcro, I'm Marcus. Can you walk?" They moved toward a cluster of larger crystal formations about half a mile away. Marcus's scanner showed the crystals created a small amount of shade and might indicate underground cavities. It was not much, but it was something. The walk took almost an hour. Marcus had to stop several times to rest, and Velcro moved slowly on weakened legs. The sun beat down mercilessly. Marcus drank sparingly from his remaining water, just enough to keep moving. He had maybe a liter left now, 1 liter between both of them. The crystal formations rose up like a forest of glass, some as tall as trees. They cast long shadows across the sand, and the temperature dropped noticeably as Marcus and Velcro moved between them. Marcus found a spot where several crystals leaned together, creating a small cave-like shelter. "Here," he said, helping Velcro settle into the shade. "Rest now." The device hummed and clicked, sending out pulses. He watched the readout, hoping for anything that might help them survive. Nothing. The scan showed solid rock and crystal for hundreds of meters down. No water, no caves, nothing but dry, dead stone. Marcus slumped against one of the crystals. He was running out of options. The emergency rations would keep them fed for a few days, but without water they would both die. The dragon child would go first, still weak from its ordeal. Then Marcus would follow, alone in the desert. Velcro crept closer to him, sensing his despair through their connection. The dragon sent him feelings of comfort and gratitude. Even dying, the creature tried to make him feel better. "You're a good kid, Velcro," Marcus said, putting his arm around the dragon. "I wish I could have done more." At first he saw nothing but the harsh blue sky and the bright sun. Then he caught movement, shapes in the distance getting larger, flying shapes. Dragons, a whole group of them, at least 20, soaring across the sky in formation. Velcro began making loud sounds, something between a cry and a song. The dragon's mind sent out waves of emotion so strong that Marcus staggered. Calling. Velcro was calling to them, but the dragons were far away and they were not changing course. They had not heard or sensed the child's call. Marcus looked at his pack. Inside was a signal flare meant for emergency rescue. It would create a bright red flash visible for miles. But he only had one, and if the dragons did not see it or did not care about a human distress signal, he would have wasted his only chance to signal any rescue ship that might come looking for him. The dragons were already moving past, heading toward the horizon. Velcro cried out again, desperate and heartbroken. The dragon child collapsed, exhausted from the effort. Marcus did not hesitate. He grabbed the flare gun from his pack, aimed it at the sky, and fired. The flare shot upward with a sharp crack, then exploded in a brilliant red star that hung in the air. The light was visible even in the bright daylight, a clearly artificial signal. The dragons changed direction immediately. Marcus watched them turn, watched them start flying toward the flare's position. They came fast, wings beating powerfully, covering the distance in minutes. The lead dragon was enormous, easily the size of a small aircraft. Her scales were deep blue and purple, exactly like Velcro's but magnificent in their intensity. She landed with enough force to shake the ground, and the other dragons touched down around her in a protective circle. The big dragon's eyes locked onto Velcro, and the sound she made was pure relief and joy. She rushed forward, and Velcro stumbled toward her on weak legs. They met in the middle, the mother dragon wrapping her wings around her child, crooning and checking every inch of the young one for injuries. Then those massive golden eyes turned to Marcus. He stood very still as the mother dragon approached him slowly. She was 3 times his height and radiated power. Her mind touched his, and Marcus felt the weight of her intelligence, ancient and vast. She saw the empty canteens. She saw Marcus's cracked lips and sunburned skin. She felt Velcro's memories of the human giving his water, sacrificing his own survival. The dragon mother lowered her great head until her eyes were level with Marcus's face. Then she did something he never expected. She bowed to him. Marcus stood frozen as the massive dragon bowed before him. The other dragons in the circle made sounds of surprise, a chorus of chimes and bells that rang through the desert air. Velcro sent waves of emotion toward her mother, sharing everything that had happened. The mother dragon raised her head and stepped closer to Marcus. Her presence was overwhelming, but Marcus forced himself to stand still. Running would be pointless and disrespectful. Whatever was about to happen, he would face it with dignity. The dragon's mind touched his again, but this time the contact was gentle. Images flowed between them. Marcus saw himself through her eyes, a small figure in the desert holding her dying child. He saw himself pouring out water, the most precious resource on this burning world. He saw himself giving and giving until almost nothing remained. Then she sent him a single word formed carefully in his mind, a word in his own language. Thessara. "Marcus," he said aloud, then repeated it in his mind, trying to send it back to her the way she had sent hers. Thessara's eyes brightened. She turned to the other dragons and made a series of sounds, complex and musical. The dragons responded with their own calls, some seeming pleased, others uncertain. One of the dragons, slightly smaller than Thessara but still massive, stepped forward. Its scales were deep red with gold edges. It lowered its head and breathed a gentle stream of mist over Marcus. The mist was cool and wet, and Marcus gasped as moisture settled on his skin and lips. He opened his mouth automatically, catching the precious water on his tongue. The dragon misted him for a full minute before stepping back. Marcus felt instantly better, his headache fading, his strength returning. It was not much water, but it was enough to pull him back from the edge of dangerous dehydration. "Thank you," Marcus said, his voice rough but genuine. Thessara made a pleased sound. Then she turned to two other dragons and sent them some kind of instruction. They took off immediately, flying toward where Marcus's ship lay broken in the distance. Velcro limped over to Marcus and pressed against his leg. The dragon child was still weak, but clearly happy to be reunited with the herd. Marcus stroked the smooth scales on Velcro's head, and the young dragon made a content humming sound. Thessara watched this interaction with what Marcus could only describe as approval. She sent another series of images to his mind. A question: why had he done it? Why had he given his water to a creature he did not know on a world where water meant survival? Marcus thought about how to answer. He could not send images the way the dragons could, so he spoke aloud and tried to push his feelings along with the words. "She was a child," Marcus said simply. "She was dying, and I could help. That's all that mattered." Velcro sent Marcus an explanation through their connection. It was a song of honor, a song reserved for the greatest acts of courage and compassion. The dragons were singing for him. Marcus felt his eyes sting with tears. He was exhausted, dehydrated, and stranded on a hostile planet. But in this moment, surrounded by these magnificent creatures singing their approval, he felt something close to peace. The song ended, and the two dragons who had flown to his ship returned. Between them, they carried large sections of the wrecked vessel. They set the pieces down carefully near the crystal formation. Thessara approached the wreckage and examined it closely. She sent feelings of regret to Marcus. The ship was too damaged. Even with their help, it could not be made to fly again. But they could salvage useful parts. Marcus nodded. He had not really expected anything different. The crash had been too severe. But then Thessara sent him a new image, her home. A world of mountains and deep valleys, where dragons nested in great cities carved from stone. She showed him crystalline structures similar to the ones on this desert planet, but massive and beautiful. She showed him other dragons, hundreds of them, living and flying together. And she showed him a place for Marcus among them. "You want me to come with you?" Marcus asked, not quite believing what he was seeing. Thessara sent confirmation along with a feeling of absolute certainty. In dragon culture, Velcro explained through their bond, the giving of water in the desert was the highest possible gift. It represented the willingness to give life itself. By saving Velcro with his last water, Marcus had created a bond that could never be broken. The dragon word for it translated roughly as kin of scale. Marcus was now considered family, not just to Velcro, but to the entire clan. "I don't know what to say," Marcus said quietly. Thessara's response was simple: say yes. Several of the dragons began working on the ship's wreckage, carefully extracting components and technology. Others used their breath to create moisture, filling containers they had brought with them. Still others arranged themselves to provide maximum shade for Marcus and Velcro. One dragon, younger than most of the others but still larger than Velcro, approached with something in its claws. Marcus's emergency kit. The dragon must have retrieved it from the ship. It set the kit down gently in front of Marcus. He opened it and found everything still intact. The medical supplies, the rations, even his personal items. The young dragon bobbed its head, clearly pleased to have been helpful. "Thank you," Marcus said, and the dragon's scales rippled with color. As the day wore on, Marcus watched the dragons work together with practiced efficiency. They communicated through sounds and telepathy, coordinating their efforts perfectly. Some of them would occasionally come over to check on him or Velcro, offering moisture or simply companionship. Thessara stayed close, clearly unwilling to let her daughter out of her sight after coming so close to losing her. But she also kept Marcus in view, watching him with those intelligent golden eyes. As the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple, the dragons prepared to leave. Thessara sent Marcus an image of him riding on her back, secured safely between her wings. Marcus looked at the massive dragon, then at little Velcro, who was already being helped onto another dragon's back. He thought about his cargo routes, his small ship, his simple life flying supplies between stations. Then he thought about what waited for him out there among the stars: more lonely flights, more empty cargo holds, more years of drifting through space with nothing to call home. Or he could go with these creatures who had honored him with song and called him family. He could see their world and learn their ways. He could stay with Velcro and watch the dragon child grow strong. It was not really a choice at all. "Yes," Marcus said. "I'll go with you." Then, with a powerful leap, Thessara launched herself into the air. The other dragons followed, and together they rose into the darkening sky. Marcus looked down at the desert planet falling away below, at his ruined ship growing smaller and smaller. He was leaving everything he knew behind. But as Velcro's happy thoughts touched his mind and Thessara's steady wing beats carried him toward the stars, Marcus realized he was not leaving anything important. He was going home. The flight through space was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The dragons flew in a tight formation, their bodies somehow creating a protective barrier that held air and warmth around them. Thessara explained through images that their scales could generate a field that allowed them to travel between worlds without ships. It was an ability their species had evolved over millions of years. Marcus watched in wonder as stars streaked past. Velcro flew close to her mother, still recovering but growing stronger with each passing hour. The young dragon kept sending Marcus feelings of excitement and happiness, eager to show him her home. After what felt like hours, a planet came into view. It was beautiful, with deep blue oceans, green landmasses, and mountain ranges that seemed to touch the sky. As they drew closer, Marcus could see massive structures carved into the mountains themselves, cities of stone and crystal that glowed with soft light. Draknar. The dragon homeworld. The formation descended through the atmosphere, and Marcus felt his stomach drop as they dove toward one of the largest mountain cities. Dragons of all sizes and colors flew through the air around them. Some carried objects in their claws, others seemed to be racing playfully, and still others glided peacefully on thermal currents. They landed on a broad platform carved from dark stone. The surface was polished smooth and etched with patterns that seemed to tell stories. Dozens of dragons waited there, watching the arriving group with curiosity. Thessara helped Marcus down from her back. His legs were shaky from the long flight, but he managed to stand. Velcro immediately pressed against his side, offering support and comfort through their bond. The waiting dragons approached slowly, examining Marcus with tilted heads and bright eyes. He could feel their thoughts brushing against his mind, curious but cautious. Most had never seen a human before. Some sent feelings of suspicion. Others seemed merely interested. An extremely old dragon moved forward from the back of the group. Its scales were silver with age, and its eyes held a depth of wisdom that made Marcus feel very young and small. This dragon moved with deliberate care, and every other dragon stepped aside respectfully. Thessara bowed her head to the elder dragon. She sent a long series of images and emotions, explaining what had happened. Marcus saw himself in her memories, saw the moment he gave his water to Velcro, saw the empty canteens lying in the desert sand. The elder dragon's gaze fixed on Marcus. The mental touch was powerful but not unkind. Marcus felt like he was being read, every thought and memory examined in an instant. He did not try to hide anything. He simply stood there and let the ancient creature see who he was. After a long moment, the elder dragon made a sound like distant thunder. It turned to the assembled dragons and began to speak in their musical language. Marcus could not understand the words, but Velcro translated the feelings through their bond. The elder was called Mordeth. He was the head of the Grand Council, the governing body of all dragon clans on Draknar. He was announcing that Marcus would be brought before the full council to be judged. Judged for what? Marcus asked quietly. Velcro sent him confused feelings. To see if he was worthy of the honor Thessara wanted to give him, to determine if one human's kindness meant humans could be trusted, to decide his place among them. Thessara sent Marcus reassurance, but he could sense her own uncertainty. This had never happened before. No human had ever been declared kin of scale. No human had ever been brought to Draknar. The council would need to debate and decide. The dragons began to move, forming a procession. Thessara gestured for Marcus to walk beside her. They entered the mountain city through a massive archway carved with images of dragons in flight. Inside, the city was breathtaking. Hallways wide enough for dragons to move comfortably wound through the mountain. Chambers opened up into vast spaces lit by glowing crystals. Marcus saw dragons of all ages going about their lives, working together, caring for their young, creating art from stone and metal. They climbed higher and higher into the mountain until they reached a chamber so large that Marcus could barely see the far walls. The ceiling was open to the sky, and sunlight streamed down onto a circular floor marked with intricate designs. Dragons filled the chamber, arranged in tiers around the central circle. There had to be at least 100 of them, representing different clans and families. The Grand Council. Mordeth took his place at the highest point. Thessara guided Marcus to the center of the circle. Velcra tried to follow, but her mother gently pushed her back. The young dragon sent distressed feelings to Marcus, but he sent back calm and courage. He would be all right. The chamber fell silent. Every dragon eye focused on the single human standing in their most sacred space. Mordeth began to speak. His voice resonated through the chamber, powerful and clear. Velcra, watching from the edge, translated for Marcus. The council was divided, Mordeth explained. Some dragons believed Marcus's act of kindness proved humans could be trusted and honored. Others argued that one good deed from one human did not erase centuries of tension between their species. Humans were territorial, profit-driven, quick to violence. How could they know Marcus was not an exception? One dragon with scales like dark emeralds stood and spoke. Its mental voice was sharp and suspicious. It sent images of human ships mining dragon territories without permission. Human traders trying to buy dragon scales and eggs on black markets. Human governments refusing diplomatic contact. How could one human, stranded and desperate, override all of that history? Thessara rose to respond. She sent powerful images of Marcus in the desert. She showed his cracked lips, his sunburned skin, his nearly empty canteens. She showed him giving water to Velcra not once but twice, knowing each drop decreased his own survival. She showed the moment he fired his only rescue flare to call the dragons, risking his last chance at human rescue to save her child. This was not political calculation, she argued. This was pure compassion. This was a human who valued a dragon child's life above his own. Another dragon spoke, this one with golden scales. It asked a direct question. If Marcus had known Velcra was a dragon, would he still have helped? Or did he act only because he did not know what the creature was? The chamber turned to Marcus. Mordeth sent him permission to speak. Marcus took a breath. He had no telepathy like theirs, only words, but he spoke from the heart. I knew she was alien, he said, his voice carrying in the silent chamber. I knew she might be dangerous. I knew saving her might cost me my life. But she was a child and she was dying. Nothing else mattered. I would make the same choice again. That's just who I am. The noise grew louder and louder. Mordeth raised his voice above the chaos, calling for order. The chamber fell silent again. The ancient dragon looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then he began to speak, and every dragon listened. The decision, Mordeth declared, would require time and deliberation. The council would debate through the night. Marcus would wait, and in the morning they would announce their judgment. Whether he would be honored as kin of scale, accepted as a friend, or sent away from Draknar forever. Thessara led Marcus to a chamber carved into the mountainside while the council debated. The room was large enough for a dragon but felt cozy rather than overwhelming. Crystals embedded in the walls gave off a soft glow. A raised platform covered in woven material served as a bed, and there was even a small pool of fresh water in one corner. Rest, Thessara said through their mental connection. The council will talk through the night. You can do nothing but wait. Will they decide against me? He thinks of what is best for all dragons, not just one clan. Remember that. They would probably send him back to human space, give him a ship, or transport him to the nearest station. He would return to his cargo routes, his simple life. Everything would go back to normal, except it would not, because now he knew what existed out here. He knew Velcra and Thessara and had seen the beauty of Draknar. Going back to loneliness after experiencing belonging would be so much harder. He must have eventually fallen asleep because he woke to find Velcra curled up next to him on the platform. The young dragon had somehow snuck into his room during the night. Marcus smiled and stroked the smooth scales, and Velcra made a sleepy, happy sound. You're supposed to be with your mother, Marcus whispered. Velcra sent stubborn feelings, wanted to be with Marcus. He was pack. He was family. They lay there together as dawn light began to filter through the opening in the chamber. Marcus knew the council would summon him soon. Whatever happened next, at least he had this moment with the dragon child he had saved. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Not the heavy tread of dragon claws, but something lighter. The door opened, and a young dragon with bright copper scales poked its head in. It made a questioning sound. Velcro sent greeting and explanation. The copper dragon bobbed its head and gestured for them to follow. Marcus's heart pounded as they walked back through the mountain city. More dragons were awake now, going about their morning activities. Many stopped to watch Marcus pass, their emotions ranging from curiosity to hostility to cautious hope. They entered the great council chamber again. The dragons from yesterday were still there, looking tired but alert. Mordath sat in his place of honor, his ancient eyes unreadable. Marcus took his position in the center of the circle. Velcro pressed against his leg one more time before retreating to stand with her mother. Mordath began to speak, his voice solemn and formal. Velcro translated the important parts through their bond. The council had debated all night. They had examined every aspect of the situation. They had considered the risks and the possibilities. They had argued about human nature, dragon tradition, and the future of both their species. Some dragons had voted to send Marcus away. They believed the risk was too great. One kind human did not prove all humans were trustworthy. Opening their world to humans might bring exploitation and danger. Other dragons had voted to honor Marcus. They argued that change had to start somewhere. If dragons never took the first step toward trust, how could they expect humans to do the same? Marcus's action in the desert represented the best of what any species could be. The vote, Mordath said, had been close, very close. Marcus felt his chest tighten. This was it. Mordath stood, spreading his great wings. He looked directly at Marcus, and his mental voice filled the chamber so all could hear. After careful consideration, weighing all arguments and searching his own wisdom, Mordath had made his decision. Marcus Webb would be granted the title of First Friend. He would be the first human ambassador to the dragon worlds. He would serve as a bridge between their species, helping both sides understand each other better. He would live on Draknar and work to establish formal diplomatic relations between dragon clans and human governments. But there were conditions. Marcus must prove himself over time. He must learn dragon culture and language. He must never betray the trust being placed in him. And if he failed, if he proved unworthy, the title could be revoked and all contact with humans would end. The pressure was enormous. The responsibility was staggering. Marcus would carry the hope of peaceful relations between two species on his shoulders. But as he looked around the chamber and saw Thessara's proud expression and Velcro's absolute joy, Marcus knew his answer. "I accept," he said clearly. "I will do everything in my power to prove worthy of this honor, and to build understanding between our peoples." Others remained quiet and watchful, but the decision was made. Thessara rushed forward and touched her head to Marcus's in a gesture of respect and affection. Velcro bounded over, nearly knocking Marcus down with enthusiastic happiness. Other dragons from Thessara's clan approached to offer their own greetings and support. The months that followed were challenging but rewarding. Marcus studied dragon language and culture with patient teachers. He learned their history, their customs, their ways of thinking. It was harder than anything he had ever attempted, but Velcro stayed by his side through all of it, encouraging him when he struggled. He also began reaching out to human governments and organizations, carefully explaining what he had discovered. Many were skeptical at first. Dragons were considered myths or dangerous unknowns by most humans, but Marcus persisted, sharing his story and Velcro's friendship as proof that cooperation was possible. Slowly, carefully, bridges began to form. A few brave human diplomats agreed to visit Draknar. Trade discussions started. Cultural exchanges were planned. It would take years, maybe generations, to fully overcome centuries of separation and suspicion. But the work had begun. 1 year after the day Marcus gave his final water to a dying dragon child in the desert, he stood on a platform overlooking the dragon city. Velcro sat beside him, now nearly full-grown, strong and healthy. Together they watched human ships arrive for the first official diplomatic summit. "We did it," Marcus said softly. "We actually did it." One human's compassion and one dragon's trust had started something that would change both their worlds forever. Marcus thought back to that desperate moment in the desert, holding an empty canteen, knowing he might die. He had made his choice based on simple kindness, never imagining where it would lead. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion created the biggest changes. Sometimes giving everything you had, even when it seemed pointless, was exactly what the universe needed. Marcus smiled and put his hand on Velcra's scaled shoulder, his dragon friend, his partner in building a better future, his family.